Hey Las Vegas, thanks for joining us back here again on Vegas Realty Check, your local Las Vegas real estate news show where we talk about all things happening in real estate. I'm Trish Williams.
And I'm Tiana Carroll. Welcome to the show. Today we have our guest, Valerie Del Grosso. She is from Origins Legal Group, and she is going to be talking to us today all about trusts.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. We're so lucky we get to talk to an attorney today.
Yay! Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a Las Vegas child, born and raised, and I've been practicing here since 2008. I'm a UNLV grad, went through the Clark County School District, and I've been practicing estate planning and probate and real estate law over the last 15 years.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
Very impressive. And a Vegas local. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yes.
So am I.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty close to local.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually born here, but I've been here for many, many, many years. More years than I'd like to say on camera.
So before we get into it, because we have such great things to talk about today, we're going to talk about trust and real estate estates, which is an amazing topic that so many people need to. If I could blast out awareness to people, this I think is one of the most important things that people need to know about home ownership and owning a home. So I'm really excited to get into that. But before we do, let's open with our weekly numbers.
As we do every week, indeed, we like to talk about what's going on with our local inventory, so that way we get our audience a realistic view of what's happening on the market far before any national news source will pick it up, right?
Right.
Because we're up, boots on the ground. We know all about it. All right, so this week in our single-family homes, we have 5,031 homes for sale. Now that number's down from last week.
Yep.
Just a
the
smidge.
inventory has been dropping. It's been dropping steadily. And I've been hearing the consumers finally hearing about this, or finally getting the idea the inventory is going down again. So that is creating some urgency.
Yeah, and a few weeks ago we talked about, as we moved into our quote-unquote Vegas real estate, it starts in around February 15th. Our spring season for real estate starts, and our concern wasn't so much about the dropping prices, because that's what you were hearing all over the news. Prices are dropping, but really it was more like, are we going to get inventory?
Yeah.
There's no reason for people to sell unless they have life changes right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And sold prices are up. 500 this week. That could turn into 2,000 sales a month. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, no,
Glad
that's
to
a
see
good
those
number.
sold numbers going up again.
Right, but that poses the question, are we going to be in an inventory shortage like we were last spring and summer, because more sales are happening each week, less inventory coming on the market? Are we going to be off balance again?
I hope it never gets that bad again. That was
Wild West
yeah,
stuff.
we were at like 1,800 single family homes on the market. That was pretty wild. So hopefully we don't get down there.
Yep.
We still got a ways to go, so that's pretty good. Price reductions, 707 last week. Price reductions again. These are, we always, in every market, even the heat, when the market was heated up crazy, we still seen price reductions. There's always people that just don't hit that price on target. And we are still in a market right now where pricing right is the essential thing in getting a home sold.
Right, yeah. Prices are everything right now.
Yeah. Not really any big news headlines happened this week. We survived the gas shortage.
Okay, so I didn't even know about it. Everybody was texting like, I'm stuck in this line for gas. And I'm like, what are you, at Sam's Club? What's happening? And they're like, no, there's a gas shortage. And I'm like, what? 2 days later, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a longer term thing, right?
Yeah, no, it was fixed within a couple hours.
Was it?
Yeah, we
Never
declared
even heard about it.
State of emergency. And then by Saturday morning, problem solved.
So it doesn't matter because you have an electric car. I'm still a fossil fuel over here, like an ancient beast over here.
Yeah.
I'm burning up natural resources. Yeah, so I go through a lot of gas.
Start a carpooling business. And
All right,
capitalize
I'd
on
ride
it.
with you. I talk to you in the car anyway. Might as well be in the same car.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, the only thing I saw really in news is they were sort of catching up to where we've been talking. So everything we've been saying for about the past month is now showing up in the news.
Yeah.
Not a lot of inventory coming on the market. Prices have stabilized,
Yeah, there was a headline last week in the Review Journal saying that the rental market's cooling.
And it is.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me. A lot of people over the last year, when their homes are not selling for the price that they want, they're like, oh, okay, I'll just rent it out. And so that's getting a lot of inventory. And whenever you have a lot of inventory in anything, any market, any item whatsoever, it's going to start to drive that market down. So I think that's what happened there.
Yeah, I think that rent got out of control, and then people were just not interested, and so they've been coming down. And even though the rental prices have been coming down, they are still sitting month after month. Usually I would tell people it's like a 2-week turnaround, but that is not the case right now. It's like a 2-month, 3-month turnaround before they're getting renters in their spot.
Wow.
But I don't do property management, so that is just me on the outside looking in. Like, I have access through MLS on what's going on in the rentals. I also have some investors who are selling properties off because they're not having renters in them. So they're just going to take that appreciation and roll it into something else.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. We do have coming up, I'm sure, in the next few weeks, sometime we have Mark Lister, the rental lister, is going to come join us on the show and talk all about that and what's going on in the rental market. So excited about that. But for today, we have Valerie Del Grosso, Origins Legal Group. Valerie, I think that, again, every homeowner needs to know the importance of a trust. Most people think that it's just for like rich people and trust funds or something like that, which is a completely different subject, right?
That's true. There are many types of trusts. Nevada is a great place to have a trust, especially if you're a middle income, kind of normal person who is, not on the Forbes list. You should still be considering getting a trust in Nevada if you own real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what for the people out there that don't understand what a trust is, can we go into what that is, what it does, how it affects the real estate, and why it's so important?
Definitely. So probably the easiest way to explain what it is to show what happens when you don't have one. And so most people, when they're making the buying decision, they're thinking about square footage and resale potential and the needs of their family and locations they like. But the reality is you could have a home for quite some time into the future. It's usually a big investment and a big decision for people. And so the last thing you're really thinking about until it comes time to sign paperwork is how this is going to be owned. So most people would say, like, it's just going to be owned by myself or by myself and a spouse, or, a lot of people own homes with a parent. And that's really a missed opportunity for people, because I hate to be the first one to tell you all, but sometimes bad things happen to people, and also we don't live forever.
Which is a shame. I'm trying to work on changing that.
Well, thank you. You'll
Let
keep
me
me
know
posted.
when you find out the solution.
I am so looking for the fountain of youth. I'd like to be here a very, very long time.
Agreed. So when you own that home in your personal name, but you're unavailable or just not here, period, to sign documents to give it to the person you'd want to have it, a court has to step in. And it surprises people because Las Vegas, although on one hand it's a very small town, which is how everyone found out about the fuel shortage so quickly, but the thing is that we have a big population and very small social services, including in Clark County we only have one probate judge. So the person who would need to sign paperwork for you to give your house to, say, your spouse or to your kids, that person is backed up, even if we filed today, almost until the end of May. So this creates a real hardship and a burden for people who are already grieving or already in some type of crisis that requires a house transfer. And I can tell you from working with a lot of families who are blindsided by this, nobody likes to find out that it's too late to do anything about that.
Right.
So by having a trust, you make the decision now about who's going to sign paperwork for you in the future if you're not here or unavailable. Super simple concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very simple. So when you get your house, you sit down at the escrow office and they ask you how you want to hold title, how it's vested. And there's a few ways to do it. And a lot of people are now getting savvy that, they can hold joint tenancy, or they can do joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. Now that one's pretty easy, right? That one, do you need a trust for that?
So that's a great point. Owning your house in a trust is an alternative to these other ways to vest title between multiple people. So vesting can really accomplish a few different things. One, it can have a tax ramification, which we can talk about later. Another one is it can determine what happens to your share if you pass away. And then the third one is more about what kind of time people are going to have to hold that property after you pass before they can sell it and get a clear title. So when you're presented with those options at title, it's a little bit of a false choice, I will say.
I agree.
Because if you had a trust, you would not be answering those questions to begin with.
Correct.
So joint tenancy, it can be nice as long as it says with rights of survivorship. So if you're a married couple and you're buying it with marital funds, it should definitely be community property with rights of survivorship. There's a tax piece to that versus joint tenancy. But for homes held in joint tenancy, what that means is as soon as one person passes, if a death certificate is presented, their name comes off title. The only thing is sometimes it can take up to 18 months before you can sell that property before a title company will insure title for you. A trust avoids all of those issues. It avoids the court. It avoids any kind of unintended consequence because everything is planned out in advance.
Yeah, which is great peace of mind.
Yes.
And from the real estate side of things and just what I've seen working with real people in the real world, there's a lot of people out there that purchase real estate that are not married, that are, purchasing together, but they're not married, so they might not be vesting that way. And there's a lot of people that purchase real estate where the husband purchases, he's the only person on the loan. The wife signs a quitclaim deed at closing saying that she's not a part of this because of financing reasons, whatever.
A non-contributing spouse.
Yes. So those situations, they're not going to be vested correctly. If something happens to the husband, then the wife has to go to probate. And probate's expensive and time consuming.
Yes. The number one thing, even aside from the expense and how time consuming, is like in the situation you just mentioned where the wife signs off to accomplish the financing, even though that wasn't their intention, if the husband dies without some type of will or trust, the house is actually going to be split between any children of his and the surviving spouse, which for most people, that is really not what their intention would be. So that is definitely an unintended consequence of, first of all, either not knowing about a trust or just, avoiding it or putting it off for some other time. And also an unintended consequence of a financial decision now that you don't realize you're actually making an estate planning decision later. So in our office, we talk to people all the time, especially if they have parents who are getting up in age. They'll say things like, oh, my sibling is going to be on mom's bank account. And to us, what I'm hearing you say is, my mom just disinherited me. And so when you're signing over your rights to your husband or whomever to accomplish the financing, you've got to get that cleaned up soon because they just disinherited you for a lot of purposes.
Yeah. And that is, again, it's a process of, it's part of the loan process. They say, if this person's the only person on the loan, because Nevada is a community property state, you have to sign a quitclaim deed saying that you can't take half of this home. That's the only way that they'll allow that to close. And then you find yourself in another situation if something were to go wrong. And we know, people die every day unexpectedly. It's never planned. So that is a serious risk that you have if you're not. And I would say that there's more people that I see personally on my end of things that are not that are at risk in those vesting situations or how they are owning title or owning the home than not.
That's true. Usually the reason they're signing off is because their own financials couldn't contribute or stand alone, and so it puts the person signing off in a really compromised position, even if that's not the intention. And of course, it's no fault of the people who are involved in the lending process. They have their requirements at title. They just, they can't give you legal advice. Just check one of these options. And so I think it's really important for the legal community to be out telling people that these are not just for rich people. There's real impact on you if you don't have it in place or if you do. And hopefully to let people know that it's really actually not that difficult to get it set up. It can be a quick process. It's not something that requires ongoing fees. It doesn't require people to know a lot of your business. And once it's done, if it's well done, even if you have life changes or family relationship changes, you really don't have to update it necessarily, although we do always recommend that periodically you check in with us to let us know if anything has changed.
Yeah, and a couple things that I think is very important to people know, for people to know when they do have if they do have a trust. I've come across twice so far where it was just very sad. They had a trust, they brought the folder, they had everything there. It was wonderful and it was pretty. However, the real estate was never recorded into the trust, so we couldn't use it.
That's right.
It still had to go to probate.
Yeah, and that happens because sometimes people think that they are investing the house properly, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. They think, oh, I have a will, so it's going to be fine. But the will isn't ironclad in protecting that property the way the trust is. Can you sort of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So a trust is kind of like a bucket, and it's only as good as what's in the bucket. And so a lot of times there's a variety of reasons why this can happen, but the house will still remain in the name of the people who bought it as opposed to being deeded into the trust. That's a big, important point. The trust cannot do anything if the property is not in there. And of course, by the time you're often finding this out, the person who would be needed to sign is no longer available. So we go back to that first point that we need to get a probate judge involved to sign that paperwork. So there is also a little bit of a misconception. People think, well, I have a will, I'll be fine. But for a will to operate, it still has to go to the probate judge. So the two big decisions that the probate judge makes is who gets to sign papers and who gets what. So when you have a will, you've told the judge who gets to sign papers and who gets what, but it still has to go to a judge to make sure that that document is valid.
And that's not free.
That's not free. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it can get very pricey and very time consuming.
Time consuming. I always tell people when we're looking at probate properties that this process could be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, depending upon what the documents are like and if people are going to dispute it or if there's any debt on the property. So.
And that's from the time that it's listed. And usually before it's even listed, the administrator has to be assigned. So there's months that happen of time before it's listed. And most people have mortgage payments. Someone has to make those payments during this time.
Yeah.
So the family is responsible for taking on this additional mortgage, this additional debt, while getting in debt or getting further in debt with the probate costs with the probate judge. And then, all of the fees that are associated with it, with going through all the legal. So you could be carrying an additional financial burden for a year easily.
That is so true. And it comes as a surprise to people that just because someone's died, the mortgage is still due. It doesn't stop or halt. There's no wiggle room. So that can be a huge issue for families that, to be perfectly clear, it's completely avoidable just by making these decisions in advance and doing a little more paperwork. You close and you get that big stack of documents. It's just a few more to make sure that all of this is totally
I love your optimism. You said that big that big packet, you did an inch with your fingers. It's more like 6 to 8 inches.
And these are, a trust is super affordable. It's a one-time fee. Again, if you need to revise or adjust, of course you have fees that are that are due for any revisions that you do. But it's a one-time fee. You get it done. You get it out of the way, and it is less than most people would pay for 1 or 2 months mortgage payments.
Oh, definitely.
If they had to carry that mortgage, once the person was deceased and they had to go through probate. So
that's true. And just in terms of like more explicit statement of costs, probate is typically a percentage of the value of the estate. And so a lot of people take issue with, why do I have to pay again to get something that belongs to me? I mean, nobody wants to do that. But the reality is it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of court process, a lot of waiting, a lot of things that have to happen to take care of an issue that really should have been taken care of by the person who's gone. But for a whole variety of reasons, people don't get to it. And so the paying for something that really belongs to you already is very frustrating for people. And a lot of times where it's just a house that's in the estate, have to consider selling the house as opposed to keeping it or being able to live in it because there's, back mortgage payments, there's the attorney's fees and costs and court costs that have to be paid. And so it's one of those things where you can pay a little bit up front and it's smooth sailing all the way till the end, or just keep putting it for another day, but eventually someone will have to handle it.
Yeah, and it really is such a nice thing when clients put their homes in trust because they are literally standing up and saying, I love my loved ones, I want to protect them in order for them to have the things I'm intending to leave for them the quickest and easiest way. Here's our trust. And it's much more affordable than people think. And it's also good for taxes. Wink, wink. Tell us about that.
Yes, so there are some tax benefits to trusts. Especially in Nevada, we have especially beneficial trust laws for people who are over 55. The details of it can get a little complex, but essentially there are some asset protections as well. We live in a lawsuit-happy society and all of that.
That must be good for you.
Yes.
Well, maybe not in estate
Aggravation
planning.
by the hour, but yes. I would just prefer that we didn't have to battle. But there are asset protection benefits and there can be tax benefits where, on the one hand, the asset is treated kind of in this purgatory over here. It's not owned by you, but you still get the tax benefits of ownership, like, better capital gains when you go to sell, and even getting to write off mortgage interest for those who are still itemizing on their taxes. So taxes are definitely part of it. I will just say this, it's a complex topic, but some of the vesting choices can have unintended consequences about how much you have to pay in capital gains. That's why for spouses especially if you're having homes over $1.1 million or so, you'll want to consider, you definitely don't want to be in joint tenancy. You definitely want to make sure it's community property with rights of survivorship if you don't have a trust. But really for a home of that value, a trust is a no-brainer. It's a few $1,000s to set up a trust. A probate for a home over $1 million, you'd be looking at almost $23,000 and upwards of a year to be able to transfer title. It's no contest.
And that is coming out of it's coming out of the inheritance of the people that you want to leave your estate to, and they're paying for that. I mean, it's not a junk fee. Of course, it's a fee for services.
Yeah, but it's totally avoidable.
But it's totally avoidable. And another thing that's important is in a sale where there is a trust and a trust is recorded properly, has been the property has been recorded into the trust, and for closing on the sale of that, it's a 30-day close. Depending on the contract and when the buyer's doing it, but you can definitely close within 30 days, just as a traditional real estate sale. And the only thing that the title company will require from you for that sale is they require a copy of the trust cert, which shows who's able to sign for the trust and verify who that is. They require a copy of the death certificate to be recorded at closing, and they require the funds that are being dispersed to be dispersed into a trust account, which again you can have opened at any bank with a copy of that trust cert. So it makes it very simple for the family who's already going through a hardship to be able to get what's theirs.
Yeah. And it's so nice because if you've ever lost a loved one, you never know how you're going to handle that grieving and what weight that's going to carry on you. And this is just one more thing that you can do for your loved ones to make sure that in difficult times they are protected and it's financially savvy.
It's true. It's a great financial decision. It saves a lot of headache later. And we work in the business, and so we have a little dark sense of humor about it, I would say. But the thing is, we really wish we could just do estate planning. It would be an ideal world where people are taking this preventative step, but the vast majority of people really don't. And I won't name the community, but it's up the street from our office, and we pulled the title records, and we looked at title for about 1,000 homes, and it's a 55 and over community. Not even 15% of these homes were in trusts. And
Right.
so
I believe that because everybody acts like I have a will, it's fine, and it's not, because a will is simply instructions for a judge to follow.
That's exactly
But
right.
you have to get one judge for one
One
judge to
judge.
that guy. I know a guy. So yeah, and it's like the first Thursday or Friday of every month. It's not even like he shows up every day to do his probate judge job. And then when you do go through probate, on the buy side, you can be outbid in court. There's little hiccups that go through. So it's not only a nightmare for the seller or the estate to have to deal with, but potential buyers will avoid probate because it's such a long process. They're at risk of losing it. They, may have already paid for a home inspection or something.
that actually is a great point too. I was speaking with an agent recently who mentioned that a lot of buyers are hesitant because the probate process, part of the purpose of it is to ensure that the best price is being gotten for the property.
Right.
And to accomplish that, you list it just like a regular deal. But the buyer has to go to court on the day of the approval. And if there are other people there who outbid the buyer and it's more than the buyer can afford to pay, they have not only waited, they may have paid money for the inspection and appraisal, and then they don't even end up with the property.
Yeah.
So now you have a property you've been paying carrying costs on, you're going to have the attorney's fees and costs, you're waiting, and then you have buyers who are treating this like it's a distressed property when really, under other circumstances, it's not.
Right.
Yeah, and most of the probate sales are looked at as distressed properties, and the investors are usually the people that will go for these because they're not tied to it. It's like, oh, if it works out, that's great. If I get outbid in court or whatnot. But a traditional buyer, and especially right now in this environment with interest rates, a traditional buyer is going in and they're saying, I'm not sure if I can get this home in the next 2-3 months, and what are rates going to be by the time that they do approve this. So it's something that a regular buyer is going to be very hesitant about going for. So the home will sell for a lower price as a distressed home, and that does affect the estate as well.
Yeah. I guess the bottom line is people may be saying, how could this process be so terrible if it's so easily solved with a trust? And
America!
the best way to explain that is most people don't do anything, and we have a system that has to answer all of the unique family situations and property situations that people have. And so in that, it really isn't a good fit for almost anyone because it has to work for everyone. And so by having the trust, it's a very simple process to lay out exactly how you want things to go. And there's a privacy element. So kind of one important point too I want to make is that for those of you who have marriage-like relationships but are not legally married, or you have parent and child-like relationships but you're not actually the adopted parent, those legal relationships, those are not legal relationships. So the probate judge will not care that you've raised this person since birth. They are not going to be your child in the eyes of the law. And so the judge is not signing paperwork to give them anything, even though everyone and their mother would know that that's what you would have wanted. So it's also a really important way to make sure that you are dictating who gets what instead of rules that a state legislator 100 years ago decided.
Right. It's just such a great way to take control of your assets and protect your family. And so cost effective. I think everybody should have a trust. If somebody did want to grab a trust and they wanted you to help them out, Valerie, how would they get a hold of you?
So you can call our office. We're 702-850-7799. You can also email at valerie@originslegalgroup.com. For those of you who maybe have started the process and were faced with a big intake packet, we don't use that process. We are really of the belief that a done trust is better than some perfect intake questionnaire that you might fill out with all of your personal information. We really don't need that. We just need to know who you are and who's getting what, and some other information about what you have. And a lot of times we can even take that information over the phone to minimize the number of appointments that you have to have.
So we have an idea of what the cost is, but what about the time frame?
So it depends on how complex you want things. You know, some people, every piece of silverware is accounted for, and other people say, you know what, just let them decide on my personal stuff. I just want to make sure that, you know, these 2 kids get something and these 2 kids do not, for example. And so if you know pretty clearly who is getting what, it could be just a matter of days for us to get it done, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And one more thing too, if you do have a trust and you have refinanced your home, you do need to record that back into your trust, right?
Yes, we have so many property transfers happening that one part is done and then the next part is not done, and so you're back in that probate situation. One other thing too, kind of going back to the vesting, there are a lot of forms websites or even like well-meaning notaries who will kind of give this advice that they're really not supposed to be giving, which is that you can just record it in joint tenancy or do a transfer on death deed, and those are more monumental estate planning decisions than making the trust. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about doing anything with your property title, it's a good signal to you that it's time to talk to an estate planning lawyer first.
Absolutely, because if anything is recorded incorrectly, even a typo, and the person that recorded this document or prepared this document or signed this document is no longer here, it will trigger probate.
Yeah, that's right.
A trust is going to protect you from that.
Yep. Which is great.
Thank you so much for coming
So
out today.
I hope it was helpful. Thank you.
This is valuable information. I hope all of you consider reaching out to Valerie and getting some more information or getting started in planning your estate. And if someone wants to get a hold of you, Tiana, and they want to talk about getting that estate.
If you need to buy an estate, call me.
Yes.
I'm Tiana. You can reach me at 702-379-9948. And Trish, how did they get a hold of you?
702-308-2878, and I'm Trish Williams. Thank you guys so much for watching, for following. Please like, comment, share, download, tell your friends about us, and we will see you next week.
Yep, we appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Bye, Vegas.